Are you seeing kind of, as Carl's described, multiple use cases where sometimes it's guiding the engineer? I suppose particularly we're seeing that this year where we're kind of evolving into this, zero touch service. And of course, we've got the challenges of various biosecurity. I never said the word biosecurity before 2021. I think I've said it every 2 minutes. But at the same time, again, the standard use cases prior to this year were very much around dialing in expertise, and quite often that's supporting an engineer. Often it's a big advantage is getting that engineer that's coming through the ranks. It's getting them being useful. And utilizing them without having to have quite such a long training period. Are you seeing similar things to that, where we're seeing different use cases emerge and kind of sitting in parallel within this remote service delivery world?
Yeah, and I think a couple of things I would point out, so in my mind, there is 3 primary use cases, but different flavors of that, I guess, based on the business, right? So one is using the technology directly with customers, whether that's a consumer customer or a business customer, being able to provide that zero touch service by seeing what's happening on site and walking them through the resolution of that issue. The other is from a employee to employee use, right? So whether that is, technician to technician, or for instance, within Munters, they actually had an issue this year where they needed expertise on site to open a new manufacturing facility, but because of the travel restrictions, that wasn't possible. So they did this remotely. So being able to, again, share remote expertise from location to location within the organization would be the second. And the third that we've alluded to, but I think is a huge area of opportunity going forward, is the idea of training and knowledge capture and transfer, right? So if you think about, the aging workforce, and maybe you have an incredibly experienced technician that just does not want to be out in the field day to day anymore, but can sit back and use this technology to be hands-on with, a number of newer technicians each day, that's an incredibly valuable proposition. The other thing I was just going to say, though, is I think what I see a lot of is companies adopting this technology for a very specific use to solve a very specific problem. Obviously, this year, COVID has been a catalyst for a lot of that. But once it's within the organization, and I think Karl can speak to this, once it's being leveraged for that specific application, it's like light bulbs are going off from, division to division, department to department of, we could use that for this, right? And so I think as that familiarity and comfort level grows with the technology, companies really start to wrap their head around all of the different ways it can be leveraged.
Absolutely. Karl, you don't have a choice. Sarah said you had to.
Sorry to set you up, Karl, but I know we've talked before about that kind of happening within Panasonic, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've tended to work almost kind of silo by silo or country by country, just because that's really been how we've sort of been organizationally set up. But actually what we've found with remote assist is that doesn't really matter anymore. It doesn't really matter where you're located. And we found that obviously NSCs within Panasonic sell the same products, but they sell more than others. So they get a more technical expertise on certain product ranges. And what we've been able to do is to kind of network and link our service organizations together. So rather than being that kind of siloed service organization, say, for example, the UK, they've been able to call in an expert from Panasonic in Germany, obviously language allowing, but bringing them into the call to support them. So there's a kind of knowledge transfer, which certainly for me is super important, because you do get those technicians that have been in companies for an awful long time. They've got a wealth of experience, and it's difficult sometimes to get that experience out into the younger members of the team, or these experienced guys that are sort of struggling to kind of pick up that knowledge. Where with this, we've been able to, with IFS, we've been able to bring them into calls, provide, again, a quicker solution for the customer, but also then the engineer learns something at the same time as well. So it really doesn't matter where you're located anymore, which is a good thing for us.
Which is really interesting, because there are echoes here. Every now and then I'll write something, and a few years later I get it right. It doesn't happen that often, but every now and then I do. I remember a few years ago writing a piece around, do we centralize the experience within the field service world, and or do we decentralize? And there was a debate going around which route to go down. And there are merits for both. I've sat on both sides of the aisle, put it that way. But one of the things that I'm seeing here is this concept and all the benefits that we would have of, right, do we centralize the experience? Do we take the guy that, has all of the experience, but quite frankly, isn't really too happy about having to climb up a pylon or into a cubby hole or whatever else it is, or even quite simply just doesn't want to travel so much because their family commitments have grown, etc. And there was this whole movement to like, well, maybe we should put them all in one central office. And suddenly what we've got now is we've got all of the benefits of that, but actually we don't need to centralize. They could be based on their kitchen table from my understanding. Yet we can leverage their expertise. And that massively addressed the problem that you mentioned, Sarah. And gosh, this has been a problem since I first started reporting on the field service sector when I came back for the now sadly no longer with us Service Management magazine. The aging workforce, I think Sarah, we're probably both guilty of this. We've been talking about an aging workforce crisis long before it was a crisis, quite frankly, because we've been talking about it for nearly, I won't age us, but for a long time. But we're starting to get towards the point where it actually is. And solutions like remote assist do seem to be paving a way to resolving that. I just want to focus the last part of the conversation a little bit around, again, I'm quite frank, I'm going to be quite open. I'm writing a white paper around this, so I'm looking to get some smarter brains than me on this. One of the big challenges that I'm starting to see around, and it's come out of some of the research we've done at Field Service News Research, we saw that, as I referenced earlier, a huge amount of companies have moved towards having some form of remote capabilities. What I've seen, and one of the really interesting findings that came out, was out of the 86% of companies that stated they had these technologies, a huge gulf between those that are using sophisticated tools, like we're discussing now, and those that are just using fairly rudimentary tools like the telephone, which is still delivering remote service, but it's doing it in a very, I hate to say it, but slightly clumsy way. And I've got a feeling that how we deliver remote service, how we deliver services remotely, how we connect with a customer, how we take all of this. First of all, I think it is going to be an important pillar in the service portfolio. I don't think we should be thinking on-site versus remote. I think it's how they merge. So that's the first thing I'd be keen to get both your thoughts on. And secondly, I think this is going to be a bit of a differentiator, certainly across the next 18 to 24 months. I think the status quo has been smashed by the world's greatest disruptor in COVID. I think it's suddenly put a load of people on a similar page. We've seen those that have embraced this, like Panasonic, suddenly kind of have their eyes open to, wow, there is so much, and that's come through on this call. But I think those that perhaps haven't taken those steps yet and may be reluctant to do so and see tools like, well, we can deliver service via the phone, I think they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage in the not too distant future. So those are two kind of key things that I'm trying to work through. And I'm really keen to get both of your thoughts on those. Karl, perhaps I can put it to you first, and let's kind of tackle these one at a time. So first of all, do you think that how you deliver service remotely will be a differentiator between your competitors in your space? Do you think there's sense in what I'm saying there, or perhaps I'm overthinking it?
I think so, yeah. I think certainly things are moving much more to a servicitization model anyway. Many manufacturers in the HVAC industry are certainly looking at that kind of concept and that modeling, and Panasonic's no different. So service is hugely important. And certainly for us, we've been primarily a manufacturer. We've made boxes, we've shifted them as quickly as we can. But we're certainly now looking at more of a solution that can provide support around the products that we make. So it's not necessarily just about the product, but the total solution that provides that, whether that's IoT, the serviceability of the product, and so on and so forth. So we see it that certainly that this year's been unusual, obviously for a lot of people. IFS for us, we really feel like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. It's thought-provoking. It's given us a lot of ideas about how we can evolve and change, not just within service, but in other parts of our business as well. So I think certainly it's turning, it's changing, and it's moving much more to a service-sized kind of organisation.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, all of these things that we're talking about, the quicker mean time to resolution, the ability to monitor, and to be much more effective with triage, start bringing in the IoT and the real-time analysis of what's going on. All of these are critical for that shift towards servitized approaches, especially when we start looking at outcome-based as well, which is kind of that final nexus for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the telephone, and we have had examples of that where we've had the technicians on the phone for 3 hours trying to give support. Actually, it's been quite interesting to kind of show them a case where we've been able to provide support in 16 minutes with the unit being completely, functioning again, rather than trying to explain, no, don't press that button, press this button, you're looking for this wire. But there is a mindset change, as I said earlier as well. And some technicians, and I've mentioned this to Sarah, they, I used to be a technician, so I know what it's like. They like to get out into the field. They like to go out and meet customers, and they like to go and touch and feel products. And that's been one thing that we've also looked at as well. In the future, that opportunity may not present itself as much, because we want remote assist to be kind of the primary way that we provide intervention and help, or certainly the primary tool that we use. So it's kind of challenged us to say, how do we make sure that our technicians get that hands-on, real-time, real-world kind of experience with our products? So again, it is challenging us in other ways to think about things in the future, because engineers need to be trained. And if they don't touch and feel the products and learn by default and by mistake, then they're not going to be particularly great at providing help. So again, that's something that we're going to sort of look at with our training centres, so we perhaps have more products in our training centres so that they can take them apart, rebuild them, that sort of thing. And we've obviously put that into our academies as well, so that they have some kind of induction into the different products that we manufacture.